Hey everybody, I'm Grandmaster Ben Finegold here with our weekly lecture series. Tonight's lecture is on the Sveshnikov variation of the Sicilian. It doesn't have its own Wikipedia article because Wikipedia decided to put the Sicilian as one really long article on Wikipedia and talk about the variations inside. So I'm inside the Sicilian Wikipedia article, and I went to the Sveshnikov variation so we can learn more about it. First, I want to thank our sponsor, Ethan from Pennsylvania. Thanks for sponsoring the lecture. So the sponsor was informing us earlier that his rating is not such where he's having a lot of Sveshnikovs, because people have to play basically 6 or 7 moves of known theory in a slightly unusual line, although not anymore. And lower rated players, a lot of them have coaches, and I don't know many coaches, although there are some, who would recommend the Sveshnikov for a beginning or intermediate player because the positional, strategical, and tactical ideas and line memorization are too tough. And I always felt that way, so I've never had either side of the Sveshnikov because I feel that I would not do it justice. Although I have a student friend who I've been friends with for 30 years. All he plays is the Sveshnikov, and he's about 2,000, and he loves it, so with the black pieces. So I've analyzed it with him, but it's been a while. Okay, so Wikipedia says Sveshnikov variation was pioneered by Evgeny Sveshnikov, and Evgeny Sveshnikov used to play chess online on ICC in the 80s and 90s, and I'd see him online. And Gennady Timoshenko, there's actually 2 Timoshenkos. This is Timoshchenko, which has like an extra syllable. Both grandmasters, confuse the audience. As Wikipedia points out, used to be called the Lasker Pelican, and my brother, also a chess master, in the late 70s and 80s, possibly in the early 90s, he was playing the Lasker Pelican, which he called it. He never called it the Sveshnikov because basically between 1969 and 1989, Sveshnikov was getting the variation named after him. And before that, it was called the Lasker Pelican, named after a player I've never heard of, Pelican. I've heard of him because of the Lasker Pelican. I've never heard of him otherwise. And Emanuel Lasker, I did some research. So the sponsor should be happy because I don't do a lot of research, but I did some. And the first game that I found in a database with the Sveshnikov was played by Emanuel Lasker in 1910. And then nobody played it. I never saw another game from him, and like every 7 or 8 years, I'd find a game. And then all of a sudden, between like 1947 and 1955, then people started playing it regularly. And then Sveshnikov and Timoshchenko did a lot of analysis and made some important discoveries. And it still wasn't super popular until Magnus Carlsen played it every game in his world championship match against Fabiano Caruana. And I think all the games were drawn, but I think in most of those games, Caruana was on the back foot. He couldn't get an advantage with white. And if Carlsen plays it in a world championship, obviously it's respectable. And almost all of the world's best players in the last 15 years tried the Sveshnikov with black, and some play it all the time. Okay, then they have a diagram here of like sort of the starting position. They talk about some of the main lines. They talk about how b5 on move 8 was Sveshnikov's idea. And I know my brother, when it was called the Lasker Pelican, before you guys were born, he would play bishop e6, which I think was the common move before like 1975. It's very complicated, and that's actually the main point of the opening. People who play the Sicilian typically aren't looking for, I want to be slightly worse or maybe equal and then outplay my opponent. People who play the Sicilian with black want an exciting game where it's not clear who's better and sort of take the advantage off of white. Instead of white being slightly better and black playing for a draw, which we see in a lot of Super GM games, black plays for all three results and doesn't cede an advantage to white just because white's white. And that's a style issue. If you like really boring positions, then you're not going to like the Sveshnikov. If you like exciting positions, but you're afraid to play them, then you can look at games in the Sveshnikov by all the world's best players, and the games are really exciting. It doesn't matter what variation it is, it's super exciting. And the Wikipedia article, which I'll highlight in blue here, points out super grandmasters who play the variation in the last 15 years: Carlsen, Kramnik, Topalov, Radjabov, Gelfand, Michael Adams, Halifman, etc. So obviously, it's a sound opening, and I think, and I can't prove it, and there's no way I can prove it, but I think if you asked all the super grandmasters in the world, what's the Sicilian that's never going to be refuted, they would say the Najdorf, and then their second answer would be the Sveshnikov. I think of all the like 10 or 15 variations black can play in the Sicilian, like the Khan Sicilian, the Dragon, the Taimanov, the Svenigan, the Pin variation, the O'Kelly variation, and the Accelerated Dragon, etc. I think Sveshnikov is number 2 for the Super GMs. The Najdorf has been very reasonable for quite a long time. Although sometimes people who play the Najdorf get checkmated. Now, I want to talk about the relation between today's lecture and last week's lecture. It's actually pretty funny. We had 2 lectures in a row that were very similar, talking about improving your chess and so forth. Now we have 2 lectures that ostensibly are discussing the Boleslavsky Hole, which was the lecture last week. This is created by black. Let me flip the board, which I forgot to do. If you're wondering, and I haven't made it clear, which I haven't, this lecture is going to mainly discuss the black side. We're looking at black doing well, what black should be doing, black winning the games, and so forth. Okay, the first game I found that Sveshnikov played, I thought that was important, was in 1969. And it was in an under-18 match between the Soviet Union and Yugoslavia. If he played it before this game, I can't find it. And 69, Sveshnikov was still a junior, obviously, but in the 70s, he and Timoshenko got a lot of theory. Now, the Boleslavsky Hole, which we discussed last week, is when you have an open Sicilian where black is trading on d4 and white's taking back, which is 90% of Sicilians. And then at some point in the first 7 or 8 moves, black plays e5. And so d5 is the Boleslavsky Hole. And black is saying, I don't care that I've weakened my d5 square. I'm attacking your knight. Your knight has to move out of the center. My bishop can get out. And I control the center, and I'm playing actively. I'm not playing passively. And just in case you guys don't remember, the Boleslavsky variation is in the classical when white plays bishop e2, which is probably the 3rd most common move. Bishop g5 is the rouser. Bishop c4 is the Sozin. Some people call it the Fischer Sozin. And bishop e2 isn't called anything yet because black can play g6 and play a dragon. But if black plays e5, this looks like a Sveshnikov. Black's playing basically the same moves. And in this position, white doesn't play knight db5, which basically all grandmasters play in the Sveshnikov, because we don't have to lose a tempo with d6. We've already played d6, and white played this passive move. So now, white already is on the defensive. So nobody does that in the Boleslavsky. So in the Boleslavsky lecture last week, we discussed knight b3 and knight f3, and we talked about, we showed some games white did well and some games black did well. One funny thing I did is I showed a game that Nigel Short lost. Then I showed a game he won with the other color. So Nigel's playing both sides of this position. Okay, Sveshnikov, we don't play d6, we play e5 immediately. And white doesn't have to play knight db5, but in our lecture he does, because that's what the sponsor wants to look at. And I would say in grandmaster play, this is 95% of games. And occasionally white plays knight f5. That's a favorite move of American grandmaster Melik Kachyan. He's the only guy I know who plays it a lot. Everybody else plays knight b5. Okay, now white wants to play knight d6 check and get the 2 bishops, or force black to play king e7. Either one's good. So black plays d6, and this is the starting position for super grandmasters in this opening. And why I call it the starting position is about 70% of grandmasters play bishop g5, and about 30% of grandmasters play knight d5. And for reasons I don't fully understand, because I haven't talked to him about it, Fabiano Caruana, in his world championship match with Magnus Carlsen, played knight d5 every game here. Even though bishop g5 is more common. So I decided for this lecture, we'd look at 2 games with bishop g5 and 2 games with knight d5. This is a Sveshnikov game, 1969, against somebody I haven't heard of, who's on the under 18 team in Yugoslavia. I don't know how strong they were. And white played bishop g5, and typically in the Sveshnikov, white wants to dominate d5, and so in many variations, white plays bishop g5 and takes the knight on f6, because the knight on f6 is defending d5. Okay, so black plays a6, kicking the knight, and in this position, according to Wikipedia, the idea of b5 was popularized by Sveshnikov and Timoshenko in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I think my brother used to play bishop e6 here, but I'm not sure. And again, that's much older move. Obviously, black is threatening b4, so white plays knight d5, black plays bishop e7, and white wants the knight on d5, so strategically, it's not even a question of which way you take, although it is possible to take the bishop, and white can claim, I have the two bishops, and you have a weak d-pawn. But more common is bishop f6, bishop f6. Black has the two bishops. Black has a lot of force against d4, and white has d5, and white can fight for d4 by playing c3. And in this variation, white does one of two things. White plays c3 and then gets his knight back into the game, or white plays c4 and tries to dominate d5 more. I don't know what white did this game. Let's find out. Okay, bishop d3, he just wants to castle. Bishop g5, the bishop's good on g5. It's not good on e7 or f6, where it can't move anywhere. Castles, castles, and c4. So I know in a lot of variations, c3 was the main move in these variations, and then c4 overtook it. This was in 69, so I don't know what the theory was in 1969. Probably there was no theory. Okay, and occasionally in the Sveshnikov, black sacrifices his queenside pawns and starts playing for a kingside attack. Okay, but usually after c4, black plays b4. Then the knight goes to c2 because the knight is terrible on a3. Black plays a5. And black's main idea in this variation is to play f5. Black doesn't really have any other pawn breaks. And then black wants to activate their pieces, fight for the center, and so forth. And white says, I have my knight on d5, go me. Okay, a3, attacking the b pawn a lot. b3, and he took the knight, because the dark squared bishop is usually pretty bad. Now, white has to make an interesting choice here. Most people would probably take with the knight without thinking, and that gives away the d4 square. Then white can say, I'm going to play knight d5, rawr, that's what I want to play in the Sveshnikov. And black will be like, I'm going to play knight d4, and my knight's as good as yours, and you can't kick my knight out, but I can play bishop e6 or bishop e7 and take your knight. Then my knight on d4 is better than your bishop on d3. Your bishop's blocked by all the pawns. So white didn't like any of that. White said, you can't play knight d4. I'm not going to allow it. And took with the pawn. And the other thing this does is it controls f5 some more. So black can't play knight d4 and black can't play f5. And black's pawn is hanging. So Sveshnikov played a4. Now, unfortunately for white, the knight is really good. That's the fortunate part. The bishop is really bad. We'll put it in red. The bishop can't move. Terrible. Okay, and white's knight can easily be traded if white insists on staying on d5 with either bishop e6 or knight e7. Now, one of the reasons grandmasters are better than non-grandmasters is we don't necessarily look at a move and go, that move makes sense, like bishop e6. Although that's what I do. I'm an old man, so that's the best I can do. What grandmasters do is they imagine where their pieces should go. In the Sveshnikov, when the pawns are on e4 and c4, black wants to play knight d4. White ruined his pawn structure to stop knight d4. So now black wants to play knight c5. So if you could cheat, you would play knight c5. That's an excellent square for the knight. It puts pressure on white's bishop and pawn. The knight can't be attacked, and so forth. And Sveshnikov, basically invented a lot of the ideas of the Sveshnikov. Even in 69, he knew that. And 69 was a good year because I was born in 1969. So Sveshnikov played this before I was born, most likely because I was born in September, but not necessarily. Okay, so queen h5, white decides to attack. Rawr, move my rooks over here and, my queen and my knight. Okay, that doesn't look like it's going to go anywhere. Bishop e6, rook f3. Black always plays f6, just keeping a defense. You can't play rook h3, rook f1, knight a5. Maybe black wants to play rook c8 and take the pawn, or maybe black wants to play knight b7 to c5, as I indicated earlier. Rook g3. White's position on the king side looks good, but where are the threats? How is this bishop going to get in the game? Okay, so king h8, unpinning the g pawn. h4, that's the kind of move that looks good, but what does it do? Knight b7, Sveshnikov wants to play knight c5, and he does. And I don't think I would consider the move bishop b1. I don't want my bishop on b1. Now, maybe white wanted to move his queen over here later in the game, and his bishop's attacked, so he's freeing his queen. But at what cost? Bishop on b1 is dead. So he takes the knight, because that's white's only good piece. C takes doesn't make any sense. Then the bishop's trapped forever. E takes. Yay, my bishop can get out. And Sveshnikov says, not so fast. E4. So if somebody wrote a book on good knight versus bad bishop, this position would be on the cover. So any grandmaster would take black all day here. Bishop on b1 is dead. Okay, so white threatened checkmate. Black saw it and defended his e-pawn. Then black played queen f7, which is a funny tactical trick. If white says, yay, my bishop's out, then the truth hurts. Tactics are important in chess. Obviously, Sveshnikov knew that, so he knew his pawn was poisoned. Rook f5, rook e7. White just can't do anything. The question is, can black do anything? Black decided to do something. White traded, which I think is bad. I think this helps black. The endgame is very good for black because the bishop on b1 is dead. Then he takes the pawn. They trade. Bishop goes back to b1. Terrible. Now the c pawn is very weak. So white says, if you take my c pawn, I'll take your h pawn. And black says, I like this endgame. Let's trade rooks and play e4, and your bishop is trapped again. So now black is going to play g5, and the king can't come up. So white played h4, and Sveshnikov said, I'm under 18, I'm a kid, so I play tactically. He played g5 anyway, because he's going to win the pawn, and the bishop is just trapped. So white played bishop takes e4. A better thing to do was resign. After black plays king takes g5, black moves the pawn here, Black plays knight d3, and the truth hurts. Black's got passed pawns everywhere. Or black's going to take on b2 and c4 and a3. Okay, so white knew his bishop was dead anyway. I don't know why he didn't resign. This is embarrassing. White resigned. White has to give his g-pawn away. Not that that matters, but it's funny. White has to move their king, that loses the g-pawn. So that was a strategical masterpiece from somebody under 18 in 1969. And Sveshnikov got his knight to a good square. He traded off white's knight on d5, and he killed his opponent's white squared bishop. So that's why we've never heard of white. Truth hurts. Okay, the next games are from super duper grandmasters. This is Topalov versus Carlsen. Occasionally, Topalov will play the Sveshnikov himself, but he's white. Carlsen plays the Sveshnikov a lot. And this is the same, because I'm going to show 2 games in this line and 2 in the other line. This is the same game we just looked at. And he played bishop takes f6. Okay, and typically this position, black takes with the g-pawn and plays f5 and attacks white's center. So that's what happened. Black can take with the queen, but then after knight d5, you got to move your queen again. Okay, knight d5, bishop g7. Topalov decided to play c3 instead of c4. White wants to move the knight here, and hopefully eventually f5. f5. Black has the 2 bishops, so black wants to open the center. And this is a blitz game, but Carlsen plays better in blitz than 99% of players do in slow chess. So, takes on f5, bishop f5. The knight's coming to e3. Now, Carlsen wants to play f5 again. I got 2 f5s, 1 for each of you. And Topalov says, I'm going to control f5. And Carlsen says, yeah, but I already got 2 guys on that. Castles, e4, knight f4, attacking the bishop. Bishop c2. White's knights look pretty good, but black has 2 bishops and a big center. Bishop e5, attacking the knight, putting the bishop on an excellent square. King h8, wants to play rook g8, queen h4, and it's the opposite of last game. Black is the one attacking. Plays f4, move your bishop away. Magnus says, I like where my bishop is. Magnus ruins his pawn structure some more because he wants piece activity. Bishop is really good on e5, and it can't be attacked. So, bishop takes d5, getting rid of one of the knights. Queen h4, threatening h2. Rook g8. Now black is threatening bishop takes g3, h takes g3, rook takes g3 check. So knight f4, blocking everything. Also potentially attacking the knight. Queen h6. Magnus says, if you take my knight, I'll take your knight, and you're still pinned here. So he plays bishop takes f5. A pawn is a pawn. Maybe that's a poison pawn. Rook f8. Magnus has a huge initiative with all these open files. A friend of mine in Michigan 40 years ago told me that if you blunder pawns, that gives your rook more open files. So even if you're blundering, which Magnus didn't do, Magnus sacrificed the f-pawn. It was weak anyway. He'd give your rook some open files. The bishop can't move away because take the knight on f4. So he played knight e6, confusing the audience. And that's a tactical mistake. I think in this position, white's in a lot of trouble. because black is going to do something tactical on g3 or f4. All of black's pieces are attacking. The rook is out of play. And knight e6 is a tactical mistake. And I think a lot of players who are under 2,000, they wouldn't find what Magnus did, like in a slow game. But Magnus sees everything. He always sacks the exchange. Well, he sacked on g3 first, then sacks the exchange. And now Topalov blundered, but Topalov has to defend his pawn, his queen, and his knight. The only way to do that is knight f4. And then after knight e5, man, I don't like white's position. Black has big attack everywhere. Black's attacking everything. White's rook is still on a1. Black's not down any material. Knight f4 was forced, but as Yasser Seirawan liked to say, Topalov went down with a full stomach. He took everything he could, and then he resigned. He took the rook, and I mean, if Magnus plays rook takes f5, you probably can't take the rook. So he should have said, what am I missing? And what he's missing is very simple. Rook takes g3, and now Topalov resigned. I'm sure he saw that. Who's not going to see that? And I guess when Topalov took on f5, he was thinking, maybe I can, well, definitely can escape there. Maybe I can escape. I think he can escape. Rook e3, queen e2. It looks like white escapes. But Topalov realized after rook g3 that he had missed a queen e3 mate with advantage. So after rook takes g3, Topalov resigned. Magnus is going to see mate in 1. And that's the good thing about the Sveshnikov, is you don't have to win one way. It's not like I have to mate my opponent, or I have to win in the end game, or I have to have good knight versus bad bishop. There's a lot of ways to win. And usually the better player wins. So strong players will play the Sveshnikov, because if they play the Petrov or they play the Berlin, they're afraid their opponent's going to draw their weaker opponent. But if you play the Sveshnikov and your opponent's weaker than you, then you excellent winning chances. Also, if your opponent's stronger than you and you play some boring opening and you're slightly worse, they'll put their foot on your throat and you'll be passive the whole game, suffering, trying to draw. Play the Sveshnikov, you could get some mating attack like Carlsen did. Okay, now we'll look at the other variations of the Sveshnikov. Again, these are very strong players. Karjakin is white, Carlsen's black. Karjakin doesn't lose with white, except for one thing. And this was played at the Gashimov Memorial. I think I did a lecture on Gashimov 2 or 3 years ago. Gashimov died very young, in his 20s. He was born with health problems, and he had health problems his whole life. He spent a large portion of his life in the hospital. But when he wasn't in the hospital, he was 2750. And they have a memorial every year, and all the top players in the world love Gashimov, and they're sad that he died so young. So the Gashimov Memorial gets some strong participants. And Karjakin and Carlsen in 2019, that's about as strong as you can get. So in a slow tournament against one of the world's best e4 players, Carlsen plays the Sveshnikov. Okay, and so far we've looked at bishop g5. The move that Fabi played against Carlsen in their world championship matches was knight d5. That's the other move. And white's threatening either knight to c7 check, winning. And you can't stop it, so you have to take the knight. Then white takes back with the pawn. And you may be wondering, should black play knight e7 or knight b8? And the answer is yes. Half grandmasters play knight b8, half the grandmasters play knight e7. And I have a funny story. My brother used to play this with black a lot. And in this position, he was playing, my brother was like 2000, and he was playing a 2300 player. 2300 player blundered here, played a6. That's a known blunder. Queen a4 is winning for white. White's threatening knight d6 checkmate, knight c7 checkmate. If you play bishop d7, knight d6 is checkmate. Black is forced to sack the exchange, but black doesn't have enough compensation. Unfortunately, my brother lost in about 70 moves. His opponent was hundreds of points higher rated, and eventually my brother capitulated. So he was winning against the 2300 on move 8 because the guy plays the Sveshnikov and didn't know it. It's risky. Okay, but grandmasters don't play a6 because they all know that. Now, knight b8 is another move. In my opinion, knight b8's better. But that's my opinion. I don't play either side of this opening, so my opinion doesn't matter. Okay, so Carlsen played knight e7, and you probably want to trust Carlsen more than me. ec4, knight g6. Now, the bishop defends the d-pawn, so now if queen a4, we can just play here. Although this is theory, then white can play queen a3 and attack the d-pawn. Okay. Karjakin played queen a4 and queen b4. Yeah, queen b4, not queen a3. Okay, attacking the d-pawn. Bishop f5, defending the d-pawn. Queen a4. And this is basically acquiescing to a draw. Karjakin plays for the win. He puts it in H. When you're white and you're 2750, you don't draw in 10 moves. Okay, maybe Geary, but you don't do that. You got to play for a win when you're white. Black against Carlsen's no fun. Might as well have white against Carlsen. Okay, so Carlsen played h5 because the way chess is played nowadays is people move their h and a pawns. I didn't do it. When I was good at chess, we didn't do that. I do it because I'm not very good, but now the good players do it. Okay, bishop g5, attacking the queen. Queen defends the pawn on d6. Kicks the knight out. Queen c7. And just playing positionally now, nothing serious is happening. Magnus plays e4 because he wants to play knight e5. Makes sense? Castles. White finally takes the pawn because black's rook isn't defending it anymore. Now the knight has excellent squares. The c4 pawn is attacked. And h pawn doesn't matter very much. Bishop e2 defending the c pawn. Queen d7 making a battery. Magnus wants to attack on the king side since white's queen is sort of silly on b4. Queen a4, let's trade queens. Magnus says, no, I'm down a pawn, I'm not trading queens. And c5, typically when white has the big pawn majority on the queen side, white's pushing on the queen side. c5 attacks the e4 pawn with the knight, so not really a pawn sacrifice. Okay, so they trade pawns. Now, Magnus plays c4, blocking the queen from the defense of the knight. Karjakin moves his knight to safety. b5, that's looking pretty good. Black has active play everywhere. I got nice pieces at the center. I have a king side attack. I got queen side attack. I got d3 square. And white's a pawn up. b4. Bishop e4. If you play knight b6, forking my queen and rook, I'll play queen h3. Queen h3 is very scary. I'm not even playing this game, and I'm scared of queen h3. So queen d4, attacking the bishop on e4. Queen f5. Now Magnus is threatening knight f3 check, bishop f3, queen f3 with unstoppable winning everything. So he played f4, stopping all of that. Queen g6, threatening queen takes g3 checkmate. Knight d3, the knight was attacked. h5, getting the queen off of g6. Bishop g4, Karjakin wants to trade pieces. You take my bishop, I'll take your bishop. Okay, because Karjakin doesn't want to get mated, so he trades pieces. Okay, and black has awesome knight, awesome queen, a rook's coming to the e-file. There's a lot of air around white's king, and white's a pawn up. Although h5 isn't defended very well. Queen g2, very defensive. Rook e8. White wants to challenge the file because rook e2 looks good, but the knight's defending e1. So black's going to get his rooks in there. Takes the pawn back. Now white's not even up a pawn anymore. Let's trade queens. Nope. Rook e4 attacks the bishop. Doubles the rooks. Obviously black's winning here. Black has everything. Whatever you want in chess, black has it. Nice advanced pawns on the queen's side. The killer knight on d3. Domination of the e-file. Open white king. Bad bishop. Bad knight. And rook on a1 no good. And in this position, Karjakin resigned. Because his position's so bad. There's just nothing to do. He's got nothing. He can't move anything. And probably the D pawn's going to fall if black just wants to take it. Rook e2 is going to win, and so forth. White's position is ridiculous. I've never seen Karjakin get crushed like that with white. But that can happen in the Sveshnikov if one side makes a very bad move or gets outplayed, and people get outplayed by Carlsen. Okay, last but not least, we have a game from Fabiano Caruana. Fabi is another super grandmaster who plays both sides. He's playing Velimir Ivić. This was chess.com Rapid last year. This is knight d5 also, which is funny. If I was white, I wouldn't play knight d5 here because Fabi played it like 5 times against Magnus in the World Championship. So that means Fabi knows knight d5. And he decided to play knight b8 because, as we saw in the first game, the knight likes to go to c5. Both sides develop, castle, bishop f5. Sometimes black plays for f5. Fabi just wants to develop his pieces. They trade pawns in the center. Bishop goes back to safety. White is like, you can't play knight d7 because I'm attacking your pawn. Haha. So Fabi kicks the knight away and then plays knight d7. Moves are easy to explain. Okay, and this is a position where I don't know who's better, but I'm going to bet on the better player. And I know Fabiano Caruana is better than Velimir Ivić. Ivić is a good player. He's a strong grandmaster, but he's not top 5 in the world. So both sides have advantages. White has a queenside majority. White has a nice knight. Black has a nice knight. Black's bishop is good. Black has the open c-file for his rook. Both, and then I guess Velimir Ivić said, well, you can't play rook c8, I'm stopping you. So they just play chess, improve their position. And Fabi says, you played c4, getting this nice pawn structure, but you're weakening your b3 pawn, so your queen and your knight are going to have to defend b3 forever. And I'm on your knight right now, and my bishop is here, so I have tactical tricks like knight takes c4, for example. So rook c1. Now if knight takes c4, we can take with the rook, defending the knight. Fabi decides to double on the e file, since he can't go to the c file. Nothing on the c file anyway. And Fabi just has a nice position because the knight on e5 is controlling so many squares in white's position. The bishop on f6 is on a nice open diagonal. White's knight can't really go anywhere, and it's just going to get attacked. White doesn't know what to do. Bishop h2, bishop g3. Attacks the rook. Attacks the knight. If the knight gets captured, or you move it, I take your b3 pawn. Bishop h4, attacking the rook on e7. And then Fabi says, I'll take a pawn. Give me a pawn. Now, Fabi is attacking the rook, the c pawn, and the bishop, and the a pawn, and Fabi's up a pawn. What else do you want? And here Ivić blundered because everything is attacked. So he couldn't figure out how to, make sure everything wasn't attacked. This is a rapid game, so I'm guessing in this position, to make such a blunder, Ivić probably had less than 30 seconds. And he played rook b2, attacking the queen, probably expecting queen takes a4, and forgot his bishop was attacked. Yet Ivić is 2,600 FIDE. Those guys hang pieces too. But usually when they're already losing, then you don't feel so bad. So those were 4 nice wins by Black and the Sveshnikov, getting dynamic positions, outplaying their opponents. And it shows you the world's best players play the Sveshnikov, and it's a very exciting opening. We have Evgeny Sveshnikov to thank for putting so much analysis in the 70s to the opening. So even players today are playing it. And I hope you enjoyed that lecture as much as Magnus did, because Magnus won 2 games in that lecture. I want to thank our sponsor again, Ethan from Pennsylvania. If you'd like to sponsor a lecture, look in the description of the video, which you should always do with every video, because there's a lot of information there. And it'll give you Karen's email address. You can contact her and sponsor a lecture on whatever topic you want to have it sponsored on. About 1 out of 20 lectures we don't do because their topic is crazy. But even if your topic's a little crazy, we'll still do the lecture. Has to be a lot of crazy to not do it. I'm Grandmaster Ben Finegold. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment, and I'll see you guys next time with more weekly lectures. Bye, everybody.